Hi everyone, welcome to an all-new episode of Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is your host, Mark Long, and I bring it to you fresh every time. The tea is piping hot, so let's get into a bunch of topics. First on the list, let's go ahead and talk about Greenland. Trump has plans to acquire Greenland as he met with NATO this past week. But let's get a little bit more background information and find out why Greenland is very important.
So Greenland, this massive Arctic island at the gateway to the Arctic Ocean, is now becoming much more important. That's because this ocean that's always been frozen is melting more and more every year, opening it up to new trade routes, to new resources, to new versions of influence that can be exerted at the top of our planet. And so great powers are once again paying attention to this place. Because great powers no longer see a desolate frozen island. They see opportunity. They see an island perfectly located close to new enticing shipping lanes. They see an island with territorial waters full of new resources, whose territorial claims theoretically extend all the way past the North Pole.
Thanks everybody. That was Johnny Harris, a YouTuber that my husband and I enjoy because he gives a lot of history, context, and talks about foreign affairs in a way where it makes sense to people who are just looking to learn more. And that was just him letting us know about the resources that Greenland currently has, but also how it's become a conflict for surrounding nations such as Canada and Russia that currently share that ocean and those that transportation hub within that area and in the ocean area outside of Greenland, which can provide a lot of opportunities for the United States. Now, President Trump hasn't backed down for his support for Greenland and wanting to acquire the nation. And in fact, the president there has currently took it upon himself to start warning its residents, basically, that there's going to be, even if nothing happens, that they should be prepared for things to pop off. So let's dive into a little bit of that and see what's happening on the ground. The Prime Minister of Greenland, by the name of Jens Frederik Nielsen, has repeatedly told residents that even if it's unlikely that something's going to happen, he has cited that Trump's increasingly aggressive rhetoric about controlling the island should cause a lot of people to pause and take things more seriously. Now, he also goes on to talk about how Trump again declared that he wants to take complete and total control over Greenland, shifting away from this purely peaceful approach to these grievances about his not being able to attain a Nobel Peace Prize. So now he's pretty much shifting gears and wanting to focus on taking control of this island. And a lot of people are thinking that the president has a personal agenda. And it's starting to seem like that based on the findings that are happening within the current deal with NATO. So at the same time, Trump has claimed that he has reached the framework for the future deal with NATO regarding Greenland and the Arctic security. So according to his statements, there's an understanding that prompted the president to suspend steep tariffs that he had threatened against multiple European allies. With this shift, Greenland's own government says it's not even able to, be briefed on the details from this framework. And they insist that any agreement that happens right now must respect the island's sovereignty and Denmark's authority. Officials stress that there has not been a deal made without Greenland and Denmark at the table. So this could mean a lot of things. Right now, we know the European leaders at NATO are pretty much remaining alarmed with how things are happening right now. And although Trump later said that he won't use force to attain the island, the damage to trust NATO and vice versa is pretty much damaged at this point. And I don't think there's trust on the opposite way of things if we look at it from that perspective. So baby, when the president of Greenland is out here telling telling its folks to prepare for a U.S. invasion, that's not geopolitics anymore. That's like chaos, shade. Obviously we have someone with the nuclear codes who is responding off of emotion. It's out of control. He's treating Greenland like it's home goods, right? Like there's some kind of like sale. Like he can just go there and take it and just almost make a decision on what to do. And if it's not on sale, maybe you're having a bad day, you're just going to take it anyway. So imagine being a NATO ally and then waking up and finding out that the U.S. might invade you. It's one of those situations where it's not even a foreign policy situation at this point. It's just a toxic situationship that is making our allies and our basically our other foreign partners look at us like we are complete bullies. So what we know is that Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark, meaning that Denmark is a part of NATO. So if the U.S. does invade Greenland right now, we know that's literally our alliance fighting itself. And we know that there are many other ways that this could be avoided. So let's be clear. When a world leader tells their citizens to prepare for an invasion, like we just talked about, that's the drama and that's also trauma that is going to have an impact on the youth there, but let alone the parents who might not know what kind of control they will have. I know there's been talks from the president about providing some kind of extended stipend to residents that live there. Meanwhile, people are looking at that as a strange approach to the situation, seeing that there's current Americans struggling to meet ends meet and struggling to keep food on the table. So if Trump wants to land so bad, why doesn't he just move there? You know, Greenland is not on the menu for many people within the country right now, but also it shows that there's a lack of in tune with what Americans are feeling right now, and that the president does not feel that America first is a priority. What's a priority for the president right now is deals, money, and setting himself up for success regardless of what his title is. Shifting gears a little bit, the Trump Department of Justice has repeatedly attempted to pursue charges against journalist Don Lemon following his live stream coverage of the anti-ICE protests inside Minnesota church. Federal agents seized devices from a Washington Post reporter in a related leak investigation, and Trump publicly amplified calls to jail Lemon. Now, we also know that Trump isn't the only one who wants Lemon locked up. We'll get into that in a minute. Additionally, a federal judge in Minnesota blocked the Department of Justice's attempt to file criminal charges, ruling that Lemon's actions were protected journalism. Despite this, the Department of Justice officials have continued signaling interest in prosecuting him under the FACE Act. Lemon has publicly vowed to continue reporting, as he should, telling the administration to keep trying, emphasizing that threats won't stop him from doing his job. And I agree. Furthermore, MAGA Minaj is back, right? She's back trying to do her thing and trying to make nonsense out of nothing. But this time, she decided to launch a homophobic tweet attack against Don Lemon after that live stream from the Minnesota ICE protest that Trump tried to get him jailed for. Lemon responded, sharply calling Nicki Minaj homophobic and bigoted and ignorant as she is. And I agree with him. He also goes on to say that she's out of her depth. And that she is classless, you know. He also definitely did not shy away from points that her ability to just randomly become MAGA is self-serving and has nothing to do with him, and that her comments just show her ignorance as a person, and that she is not necessarily someone who's looking for fame. She's looking to get something out of this. Let's see what he had to say when he sat down with a reporter.
Nicki Minaj has many, many issues that would lead one to believe that those issues are possibly the reason that she's cozying up to MAGA right now. Such as her brother is reportedly a pedophile. Her husband is reportedly, and if you look is a sex offender. You know that.
He's supposed to register.
He's supposed to register as a sex offender. And then there's supposedly another issue, allegedly, with another family member. And so when she called me that word, I said, how dare you, use a word, a sexual thing like that, when you should be looking at the man you sleep with every night in the same bed with, I guess, if you are. Because there isn't anything worse than that. Or your brother who's the alleged pedophile. There's nothing worse than that. So how dare you? And also to say that you're a Christian and you're calling me out as a Christian and I wouldn't do that to any other religion. Does she not recall the 2012 Grammy Awards when the Catholic Church came after her when they said her performance at the Grammys was sacrilege? When the Catholic League and all of those folks and Christians were coming after her for her egregious performance at the Grammys, she's a hypocrite. And also, reportedly, she's possibly an undocumented person. She has said that she's undocumented. She came as a child, and I don't know if she's ever registered to be a citizen. And if that is true, under those rules, which are under Donald Trump's rules, she should be picked up, detained, reported, and deported.
Dawn goes on to talk about how she's cozying up to people and how she's just doing this to save her ass, and I completely agree. So let's break this down. So Nicki Minaj is deciding to tweet at Don Lemon, calling him a cocksucker because he decided to basically do his job and report on an incident that is happening with ICE. We'll get into this in a minute, but ICE recently just killed another person in Minnesota. ICE is out of control, and so is the religious right. And Nicki Minaj is taking it upon herself to take on some of these values, these newfound values that she has, to attack other journalists and reporters in a way to stay in the good graces of her daddy, Trump. So what she is failing to realize is that this is not going to go well for her, especially career-wise. Mainstream media does not glob on to bullshit, political bullshit, especially nowadays. We know that Trump's days are numbered as well as his administration, based off this horrible take back of the country where they're promoting whiteness and promoting this idea that in order to be an American, you have to identify a certain way. And Don Lemon is doing his job by showing the inhumane aspect of ICE and what they're doing. And Nicki Minaj is just trying her best to stay in the good graces because, as he mentioned, she is an undocumented person and she does not want to get deported back to wherever the hell she came from. And in my opinion, if she's going so hard against Don Lemon, what she really needs to do is start, as the Prime Minister is telling the people in Greenland to do, is to make sure you're stocking up. Nikki, you have all that money in the world. You should be focused on putting the money where your mouth is by protecting yourself, but instead you're out here thinking that you're saving the world by being MAGA. You're not MAGA. You're ignorant. And your pedophile brother and your pedophile husband is exactly who you worship every night. Okay, let's get into Nicki Minaj really quick, because I'm not done with Miss MAGA. Miss MAGA often denounces bullying, but she often engages in harassment, and especially public feuds. Nicki frequently speaks about, harassment and what that looks like, but she's been the one encouraging her fan base to go after journalists. She's publicly mocked and insulted people she disagrees with. She amplifies personal attacks during feuds. For example, talking about Cardi B's children. In addition, Nicki Minaj positions herself as this pro-women person, but attacks other women in the music industry. She repeatedly has gone against female rappers, and the list includes Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, we have Lotto, don't forget, obviously the Queen Bee. There's been several people that she has come after, so Queen Bee meaning Lil' Kim. She's also claimed that other women have copied her style of rap and her influence. Meanwhile, she also says that her female peers are also demanding unity, and she doesn't believe in that. She believes that there's one person who sets the tone, and it's quite hypocritical given that Nicki is all about community, right? So, another thing about Miss MAGA Minaj, she also denounced fake news while spreading misinformation, and she did this in 2021 with her claims about COVID vaccines. Basically saying that COVID vaccines cause swollen testicles, and this claim is something that was publicly debunked by several departments, but also critics also argued that she demands accuracy, while also circulating on this idea of stuff that she finds out about and promotes these unverified stories, especially pertaining to health. One other thing that Miss MAGA Minaj has also done was that she would call it homophobia, but then use homophobic language. She did this to Don Lemon, and she's done this to several of her supporters in the past. So, and, don't even get me started on the several people that have, basically gotten to it with her, and she has said something kind of on the cuff, just because she feels that she can get away with it with her fame. Something else that MAGA Minaj has done is that she demands privacy, but she always exposes other things on her lives, for example, doing cocaine. She publicly drags other artists, personal issues, revealing private conversations that she's had with people. And she also weaponizes, information during feuds. So MAGA Minaj isn't a good example of a human being. You know, MAGA had that right before she became MAGA. Now it's even more clear to those who were fans of hers. We can never trust her. She's not even a good, authentic person. And it just shows you don't have to necessarily like the artist or the person to like their music. And I think Nicki Minaj is a perfect example of that. You know, she's falling in the same category of R. Kelly. You know, a failed industry entertainer who decided to align herself with the op. And she's going to definitely feel the repercussions of that once she starts losing that money. Shifting gears, there is another shooting in Minnesota this weekend, but this time it was a 37-year-old man. Let's take a listen.
That we have now confirmed that the man who was shot was ICU nurse Alex Pretti, and that is confirmed by his parents. And to his parents, I am so sorry for your loss. Regardless of the circumstances, to lose a child is the most horrific thing. But we can now confirm that the victim who was shot in this situation was Alex Pretti, an ICU nurse from Minneapolis, an American citizen, according to Chief Brian O'Hara.
I also want to say one more thing, because it is our duty to tell the truth, however we see it, right? And journalists get painted in many different lights these days. And I'll say this. What Commander Bavino said in his press conference and in the press release was that it appeared, according to DHS, that this man, what was his name?
Alex Pretti.
Pretti. Came there intending to harm officers. We have a picture of him. And the video shows him directing traffic. The next part of the video shows him trying to help a woman who got shoved by an officer and then resisting his own, I guess, detainment, if you will, and being sprayed in the face with pepper spray. The video does not appear to back up that statement.
You have not seen in the angles
None of us
that
have.
you have watched that he seemed to be threatening law enforcement.
And he may have been, I don't know. I have no clue.
Sure, we
can't
don't
prove any of that. But what I'm
Right.
saying, the video shows a man directing traffic, helping a woman, and then sort of resisting his own detainment. That's
So at what point is enough? And that was some coverage that was happening on KR News in Minnesota. It's just ridiculous that we have to report on a story of someone else losing their life. And it seems like from what I see in the video, there isn't much happening in regards to violence. There's been this kind of narrative that ICE and the Trump administration has been putting out by making it seem like that innocent Americans are out attacking ICE officials and out there attacking people on the right. And that's just not happening. If anything, these deaths are happening as something that the administration has created. People are dying because of this administration. If your job is to go out there and get criminals, rapists, and people who are just here illegally off the streets who are committing all these horrible crimes, why don't you just go do that? There shouldn't be all this chaos. There shouldn't be this militant force of trying to make it seem like that your job is being so impacted. People should be able to protest in this country for stuff that seems inhumane. What's happening is inhumane right now in Minnesota. People losing their lives. That's unacceptable. So let's break down the story. So federal immigration agents, obviously ICE, shot and killed this man. And like they mentioned, his name was Alex Pretti. And he was, I believe he was just kind of helping out in the scene. So officials are claiming that Pretti was armed and the agents were attempting to disarm him. A bystander video captured the struggle and the gunshot in which this happened. Now, the Minnesota police chief by the name of Brian O'Hara confirmed that the victim was an American citizen with only a minor traffic violation on record, and he was not this violent criminal as the right would like to do and promote right off the bat. So now let's talk about this more in depth. Governor Tim Walz publicly blasted the operation as sickening and demanded that President Trump pull thousands of federal agents out of Minnesota immediately. Now, Walz did this before making a phone call to make sure that people were coming in and that he enlisted the National Guard, the state National Guard, to protect citizens. Walz also called the federal actions an absolute abomination, insisting that Minnesota's justice system will have the final say in this. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, asked how many more Americans need to die for this operation to end in our state. noting that nothing has happened and that this has been the third federal shooting in the city this month. So right now in Minnesota, tens of thousands of Minnesotans have been protesting this ICE presence for days now. And now tensions are rising high with this recent incident that just happened. The largest demonstration that has happened in a while is intended or is being implemented as we speak. So more coming from this, the federal response to this is now that President Trump is insisting that Minnesota allows ICE to operate freely within the state, meaning that he has plans to make sure that there's more funding that comes in, as we know that that is a part of what is happening right now, but also that federal officials are describing the shooter as highly trained Border Patrol person and that he has 8 years of service. So the bottom line here is that Minnesota is in an open standoff right now and that American citizens are in danger, and that residents protesting must be careful, especially because they're in the tens of thousands, and that local leaders are currently demanding that ICE leave the state. We have people like Amy Klobuchar definitely make a statement, as well as there's current action happening right now to basically combat some of this bullshit that's happening where people are dying because ICE does not know how to do their job, and they're just hiring anyone at this point. My heart goes out to the families impacted by this, but most importantly, it goes out to those who have to like constantly live in fear, and especially, you know, in the moment your life can be taken away. That is a terrible way to live. As Americans, it's already hard enough in this economy, but to worry about this social issue on top of existing in a nation that is supposed to make sure that we're safe, I don't feel safe. I'm just in a state, one state away from Minnesota right now, and living in a metropolitan area as well, I would assume that there's going to be more rampant ICE raids over these next 3 years as more funding has been put. So, you know, I talked about it on a previous podcast, but please take all the precautions you need to make sure you are safe. Do not open your door for ICE. They cannot just enter your home. I know there's policies out there saying that they can do that, but right now they cannot. Make sure that you are recording everything and anything you can. If you see someone in harm's way, make sure you do not interfere, but make sure you are getting every footage you can to make sure that there is something that will exist if the case does not go in the right way it should in terms of social justice and making sure that these ICE agents are held accountable. There will be footage that we can use and keep so that justice can be served at some point. Because right now, these are just racist attacks. But most importantly, if you're a liberal or if you're someone who's protesting, you're also someone who can be murdered, according to the President of the United States. Just to keep staying on topic with things that are happening in the country, I think it's time, and this is just something that I've been thinking about, and I know this isn't something that a lot of people have completely rolled out, but I think it's time for Congress to call for the 25th Amendment over Trump's mental stability. So calls to invoke the 25th Amendment have surged across Capitol Hill. So lawmakers have been reacting to this. The president obviously doesn't think it's going to happen, and many people in the country don't believe this is something that's going to happen. But according to multiple reports right now, Trump sent a message to the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre linking his aggressive push to seize Greenland to his resentment over not receiving a Nobel Peace Prize. If that's not a sign of someone who's not mentally stable, I don't know what is. Everything is very self-serving for this president. And right now we know this exchange that we just learned about came from a European leader that attempted to de-escalate these tensions after Trump threatened more tariffs, right? He threatened more tariffs against U.S. allies who oppose his Greenland ambitions. So right now, we're seeing that Democratic lawmakers have pretty much urged the cabinet to invoke this. We know the cabinet is completely up Trump's ass and are not going to do that. But let's speak out in regards to some of what these Democratic officials have said. Representative Ansari called Trump mentally ill and demanded his immediate removal, arguing that his Greenland-related statements demonstrate a dangerous break from reality, and especially in regards to America being first. Another senator, Ed Markey, made a statement echoing this idea to invoke the 25th Amendment, alongside reporting that Trump tied his Greenland aggression directly to winning a Nobel Peace Prize, and that Americans should not take that lightly in terms of what's important to this president. And then last but not least, Representative Sydney Kamlager Dove. She's a Democrat representative from California. She said that Trump's behavior shows that he's not only acting in the best interest of himself, but he's definitely not acting in the best interest of the American people, and that this now poses as a national security risk. Newsweek also reported that several Democrats have been raising alarms for weeks about Trump's mental instability, making it also conversations and statements in regards to his pattern of destabilizing and his irrational decision making based on his Truth Social tweets. It goes further. So right now, lawmakers are pretty much pointing that the U.S. Will likely seek control over Greenland, but the fact that the president is not continuing to understand how to control his rapid-fire posting sprees on social media, for example, his 33 posts in 45 minutes, his inability to just calm and think about the situation through, while also, there's so much talk about the 25th Amendment being used for temporary transfers of power due to everything that's happening right now. And USA Today notes that this would be unprecedented right now in America. And it would definitely require the vice president and majority of the cabinet to formally declare the president being unstable and unable to basically be discharged due to his duties. So there might be some conflict there. Obviously, there's not going to be more push. But I can also say, as someone who is a mental health professional, that these are all signs of someone who is very narcissistic and is willing to take it upon himself to put himself self-serving over the lives of actual people. And I think that should cause us a lot of concern, but most importantly, cause us to look at this from the scope of when Biden was president, and how him not being sharp in his speech was just a sign for Democrats to jump ship. And I think that should also be something for us to consider, considering the president doesn't even know the difference between Greenland and Iceland. Take a listen.
I'm helping NATO, and I've until the last few days when I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They called me daddy, right? The last time. A very smart man said, "He's our daddy. He's running it." I was like running it. I went from running it to being a terrible human being. And now what I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection. It's a very small ask compared to what we have given them for many, many decades. I know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland.
So that's just a perfect example of how Trump doesn't even know the difference between Greenland and Iceland, and he doesn't even know where anything is on a map. Trump doesn't even know half the time how much things cost in the country. He's also not aware of foreign affairs as much as he makes it seem like he does. He's all about business deals and making money for himself and his cronies and the con people that are surrounding him. But his time will come, and quote me on this because I'm going to say it now. Trump is definitely, if he doesn't go to jail, his entire cabinet will definitely be incarcerated, giving the egregiousness and giving the absolute awful non-American first decisions that this administration has been making just to distract us from the Epstein files. It is clear as day. And, I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot of answers soon enough. And we're going to start seeing a lot of accountability because abuse is never okay. And these people are going down. Shifting gears from the president, TikTok closes a deal to split the U.S. app from a global business. Let's see what the BBC has to say.
Are TikTok's global ambitions under threat now that the US deal is done? Well, it shows just how political things have become for the company that owns the app, ByteDance. And it's been here before. Now, in the US, ByteDance wasn't even leading the talks. The deal was worked out between officials in Beijing and Washington. ByteDance will lose control of US data and its all-important algorithm, which will be handled by a group of partner companies under a licensing setup. That creates a real challenge for ByteDance's global ambitions. Running the same app in different ways around the world is complicated, and political pressure from one country could spill into other markets. Breaking off its business bit by bit is the last thing the company wants to do, and the stakes are high. For China, TikTok isn't just an app, it's one of the most powerful tools of global cultural influence. And for the country's tech champions, global success clearly comes with limits.
Yeah, so what's going on with TikTok? So what's going on is that the new company that is currently working on this joint venture with ByteDance is US based, and American and allied investors hold about 80% of its ownership right now. ByteDance, as mentioned, retains just about 20%, keeping it below the legal threshold that would basically trigger a ban. So the major US investors include Oracle, Silver Lake, MGX, and additional American private equity and tech investors. So from what we know from that is that the BBC's Asia business correspondent that reported on this framed this as China's tech ambition gone completely global, in the sense of making sure the digital platform reaches those that it helps businesses, but also it just gives the ability for tech giants to become a little bit more invested. Now, there is a strategy that is being kind of taken into consideration here that is paving the way from some geopolitical scrutiny. ByteDance, they create a more localized entity of this, and they allow for foreign oversight of the data and the algorithms. So this happens because they accept reduced control over its most valuable global products. And we know that China's tech champions right now are losing the ability to scale globally, which brings in the other partners. So from what we're seeing is that right now, India, Europe, Australia, and Southeast Asia, have been kind of pushing for more demands, but also a little bit more safety for the app. But this could also reshape how the Chinese tech firms operate internationally with the safety component in place. We also know that there has been this reduced ownership by ByteDance, as mentioned, but it also kind of avoids a catastrophic US shutdown of the app, while also retaining its influence over product development and maintaining global brands continuity. So that means that there's going to be opportunities for the United States, to control, to seek more control in regards to U.S. data and more oversight in regards to that. So for TikTok users, it just means that, there's over 200 million U.S. users right now, and the experience of being online is kind of like the new wave of just kind of how people stay socially connected. So I think we're not going to see any changes anytime soon, but this kind of just reinforces that the US and China have this tech rivalry in terms of reshaping the way that the internet is being used and how information and businesses can capitalize off of apps like TikTok. I want to shift some gears and go back to the ICE raids really quick and just kind of give a brief update on what's happening with the 5-year-old boy that was taken from the Minnesota preschool. And now his father is in Texas detention, somewhere in a Texas detention facility. Let's take a look at what ABC 7 Chicago had to say about the child.
Braving sub-zero weather today, demonstrators taking to the streets, protesting the federal immigration crackdown in Minnesota.
Why was it so important for you to be out here today?
This isn't the world I want to live in.
The march in Minneapolis punctuating a day of protest. Community organizers say 700 businesses shut down across the state today. A general strike calling for ICE to get out of Minnesota. Immigration officials not backing down.
Operations continue unabated here in Minneapolis.
And new details today about that preschool boy standing in the Minnesota cold, swept up in the ICE crackdown. Immigration officials now say the 5-year-old boy detained with his father were both sent to a facility in Texas. Witnesses say multiple people, including the boy's mother, had urged ICE agents to let him stay in Minnesota, Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino calls news reports about the boy a false narrative.
I will say unequivocally that we are experts in dealing with children. Let me say that again, experts in dealing with children.
The family's attorney insisting the father and son entered the U.S. legally.
Liam and his dad did enter the United States at a port of entry to seek asylum. They've shared all of their information with the government, and they were following the process.
So they claim that they're experts in working with children, but if they were experts in working with children, and let me just say this is absolutely inhumane. It is negative something degrees outside, and you were using a child as bait who came into this country legally with their parent, seeking asylum with plenty of documentation for you to see. And now you are positioning Americans to look at this situation like it's normal. We shouldn't even have to see it to be a five-year-old for us to be completely disgusted by the actions that are happening right now with ICE. But to frame this, we need to look at this as an issue of humanity. Someone who is 5 years old can't even grasp the concept of what it is to be a citizen in a place and in a country. And these people on the right and all of these ICE officials, the president, his administration, whatever, they all claim to be Christian. There is nothing Christian about using a child as bait so that you can deport someone who came into this country legally in a process that is appropriate. Now, I don't know how the administration is going to continue to combat these lies that they try to put out there, but this is a perfect example of the inhumanity that this president is trying to exemplify and why we need to get these people out of Minnesota, but most importantly, why ICE needs to be abolished in this country. Okay, we're going to end some things here by talking a little bit about the freezing temperatures. So what it looks like in Madison right now is that it's dangerously cold. So, it's winter cold. We're talking negative temperatures. So -2 and it feels like -1, that kind of thing. And we know that the wind chill across Wisconsin has dropped from -30 to -40 just overnight. And frostbite is continuing to be an issue. So even if you're outside in as little as 10 minutes, you're likely to experience some kind of extreme health condition due to the severe cold. And 200 million people right now across the country are bracing for the massive winter storm. And basically a lot of stuff hit the fan. Here's what ABC News had to say this morning.
This morning, that massive 2,000-mile wide winter storm setting in for more than half the country. A dangerous mix of snow, crippling ice, and frigid temperatures stretching from New Mexico all the way to Maine. 18 states now under emergency declarations, 200 million people under alerts. Here in Texas, the torrential rainfall quickly morphing into a dangerous icy mix. Flash freezing under 25-degree low temperatures overnight, turning roads into ice rinks, shelters filling up.
I just can't do it no more. I ain't trying to die.
Across the South, a rush to prepare. A swarm of shoppers in grocery aisles stocking up on essentials.
Beer, wine, tea, coffee, milk, cereal. I'm not planning on going anywhere.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma, food running low at some grocery stores.
They're out of eggs. There's no bacon. There's no butter.
And in Oklahoma City, where more than 8 inches of snow are expected, plow crews working 12-hour shifts to treat roads. Crews in Dallas strategically placing brine trucks, sand, cones, and spreaders beneath overpasses to quickly respond to trouble spots. Governors across the country delivering a clear warning.
This winter storm has the potential to be remarkably dangerous.
Millions also bracing for possible power outages.
I spent the day preparing for this snow ice storm situation.
In Georgia, Natasha Beauclair stocking up on everything from water to supplies, batteries in case of those power outages.
That I had flashlights, crank radios, that I had power chargers that were portable for our phone that only required batteries, paper products. If the water goes out as well as the electricity, I'm always like, it is better safe than sorry.
And as this storm pushes on, the Northeast from New York to Boston, expecting up to a foot of snow, the heaviest the region has seen in 5 years.
Thank you, ABC News. So that was just a report of what it looks like around the country. But most importantly, here in Wisconsin, we see school districts closed throughout the week. Obviously, with the weekend here, we've seen a little bit more closures from other events and touring acts like Cheap Trick here in Madison. They're performing somewhere. And it's because of the dangerous temperatures. So what I would say to people within the Midwest and people who live locally near me is that if you're stepping outside today, obviously, this is a normal cold. So take the precautions necessary. I personally would not suggest walking your dogs in this temperature unless you're completely covered from head to toe in terms of making sure there's no skin exposed. But we see this is impacting people all over the country. It's an extremely cold time of the year, and it's impacting everyone on top of everything that's happening with the current administration. So your health comes first. Please be warm, and please make sure your family is warm and that you are taking every precaution necessary to stay off the black ice so you don't slip and break a bone or anything like that. This is some cold stuff. We have a husky, so our husky loves this weather, but we know that we're not huskies, so we are going to be hibernating inside. Switching gears and ending on a positive note, large crowds have gathered along parts of 2,300-mile Peace Walk from Texas to Washington, D.C. in regards to following a Buddhist monk. And this monk says that they are walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. to promote awareness of peace, kindness, and compassion across the United States and around the world. In a time where we need peace and compassion most, I commend this monk from North Carolina, who is taking it upon himself to carry out such a positive journey for people. And it looks like that they have traveled through Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, and they're on their way to day 82 out of 120 of their journey. So kudos to them. Keep up the great work, and BBC, thanks for also having news that is positive and that is not focused on the negativity that we all have to be a part of. Thank you for listening to Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is your host, Mark Long. See you next week.